Hello and welcome. My name is Ryan Zinn, and I am the Political Director of Fair World Project. Today, we are kicking off a series of webinar interviews with thought leaders within the fair trade movement to talk about the response on the ground and in the global north to the COVID-19 virus. As we are seeing both at home and abroad, COVID-19 is being a huge disruptor in the economy and in our personal lives. And this, of course, is also having great implications for fair trade producers, partners, advocates, and retailers. We're starting off our process by interviewing our good friend Erinch Sahan. He is the World Fair Trade Organization Executive Director, and he is coming to us direct today to talk a little bit about his organization and their response to the COVID-19 crisis. Erinch, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here. And what a wonderful time to connect and explore solidarity within our movement.
Yeah, indeed. And so today you're actually our first guest on our ongoing series of the COVID-19 crisis response series. We want to start it off a little bit to give our folks an opportunity to know a little bit more about the WFTO, the World Fair Trade Organization.
Well, we are a community of social enterprises, cooperatives, fair trade pioneers who put people and planet first across their entire business model, across their supply chains, and have been at the heart of the fair trade movement since the World Fair Trade Organization being in 1989. So essentially, we're a bit of a hybrid. Most of our members, our 419 members, are enterprises, cooperatives, social enterprises that are fully 100% committed to fair trade. A bunch of them are networks of the fair trade movement as well, country networks. A bunch of support organizations as well. So it's a bit of a varied membership, but essentially what we are is the most representative global body that captures the cross-section of the fair trade movement and tries to push the fair trade model that is a fully authentic and holistic application of fair trade in everything any business does.
Yeah, I found the WFTO to be a very unique organization because it has all of those different perspectives and membership, representation, from across the supply chain all the way to advocates and thought thinkers in the movement. And as such, what are you hearing from membership as far as their reality as it relates to the COVID-19 crisis in their countries? And what are kind of some of the implications for the fair trade movement in marketplace?
I mean, I'll start with some of the negative stuff because it is overwhelming at the moment, Ryan. What I think our movement, especially our non-food side of our movement, is facing is from what I can tell, the greatest challenge we've ever faced. It's for many organizations around the world, it's an existential threat, whether they're an importer organization, the US or Europe or elsewhere, that is fully committed to importing and distributing and retailing fair trade products, or they're a producer organization predominantly in the developing world around the world. At the moment, trade is halted for those that aren't focused on essential products of food. It's very difficult for them to sell anything. And these are enterprises that are fully committed to their suppliers, their producers, their workers, their artisans, their farmers, and they're ones that are trying to stand by them during these tough times. So if you can imagine, you exist for some of the most vulnerable people on the planet, some of the most marginalized people on the planet, and your oxygen is the income from your fair trade products that allows you to do this wonderful work. The minute that oxygen is cut off, your world is shaken, and these aren't ruthless enterprises. I mean, I read about some of the fast fashion factories that are happy to close down at the drop of a dime. Some of the fast fashion brands that are very happy to cut off their suppliers immediately. As soon as it looks a bit risky. These are guys and women who are standing by to the extent that their finances allow it, which means that they're going to the brink of economic collapse, some of them, to try to stay alive. So it's huge. A lot of countries are in complete lockdown that they're trying to operate within. Even if they're not, their buyers often are. Even if they're not, there are other disruptions happening that is making trade and commerce almost impossible. And in the words of one of my good friends from India that messaged me last night, one of our members, he's never felt so helpless at a time when normally you would meet any global crisis with global solidarity, particularly through trade. He can't lean on that. He can't say, guys, come on, let's push through. Let's have a campaign campaign, push through some products. Let's get some trade going here so we can channel that income to these people that need it. That option's off the table. What do you do? So it's tough times, and that responsibility. I think all of us across the fair trade movement, we feel it firmly on our shoulders at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like this is a very unique crisis in that it's both a financial crisis, but it's also sort of a humanitarian crisis in that trade is completely shut down. So there really is no sort of like, the traditional model of being able to sort of pump some, capital into different countries or buy product to keep people afloat, quite frankly, just doesn't exist anymore. And so that being said, it kind of forces us to rethink our approach. From your perspective or that of the WFTO, kind of where's your thinking right now in terms of how do we look at this crisis in the bigger picture and going forward with fair trade?
Well, I think, I'm sure it's a well-worn phrase now, but never waste a crisis is rings through the back of my mind, because I think the world's going to be changing probably beyond what we can even imagine at the moment as a result of this. I mean, some of the things that I would expect there's more thoughtful consumption as people realize what they need and don't need necessarily in the world. There's going to hopefully be new ways of being open to economic ideas that would have been laughed off the stage just a few months ago, whether it's universal basic income or it's new Green Deal, or it's thinking about ways of getting to a zero carbon economy as soon as possible, ways of ownership of businesses and companies and distribution of profits and value. I think all of that is now firmly up for play for the way we shape a post-pandemic world, and that certainly opens my eyes to the role we as a fair trade movement can play, because we've been around a while, in sort of the ethical, sustainable world. We're kind of, we're the OGs. We're the original guys who kind of been pushing some of these ideas. And so I think as a fair trade movement, we might look like we've been around for a while, but suddenly our ideas are potentially even more relevant than ever before. There's a lot of new organizations, ideas, movements that have jumped into proposing new economics. And I think we need to be firmly, boldly, proudly speaking up amongst them and saying, guys, we can build something very different out of this. We can, if governments are willing to play the kind of role that they've now shown that they're willing to play, of any political persuasion around the world at the moment, where you've got the kind of interventions that can be also directed to reshape economies to ones that are more equal, more sustainable, equitable. We could play on that. We could create an economy that we pivot out of this crisis that takes some of the values and the vision and the proof of concept of the fair trade movement and shapes a different reality. So on that side, I'm excited, cautiously optimistic, very cautiously, because I do think it's going to be a different power politics that comes out of this, as well as concentration of wealth can actually get much worse as people hoover up distressed assets and businesses, and those that survive can take up a bigger share of what remains. So I think the power structures are going to look different, but what the kind of ideas people are open to will suddenly expand, because all this has shown that a lot of change and transformation is possible. So yeah, those things are certainly exciting me, but as well as some of the micro level innovations I'm starting to see across our movement as well.
Could you talk a little bit about some of those micro innovations? I think those sort of silver linings and those windows of hope, I think, are really important in this time of crisis.
Yeah, I mean, one really interesting innovation happened across the WFTO membership. So most of it, we're in 76 countries. Our members are in 76 countries. So they're in all sorts of places. And the minute that the COVID-19 crisis hit, some of their impacts were so some of the reactions were, okay, what's needed of us? What role do we play in our community? Traditionally, we've played this livelihoods opportunity generation role. We've created a wealth distribution role. We've created, a role to bring in marginalized people into global supply chains and create opportunity out of that. Right now, that's not possible. What does my community need from me right now? And what we found as an answer to that is masks and personal protective equipment. And within days, they were pivoting their production looking at new product designs, thinking, how can we use a product design that came out of Hong Kong, for instance, which is open for anybody to use, a Hong Kong master design that really results in quite good results in terms of protecting people. If you wear it, a whole bunch of our members across Asia are currently shifting production to create that mask so they can make it available for their local communities, and people that are providing essential services, not non-surgical, but essential services. The same is happening in Latin America. Same is starting to happen in East and West Africa and Southern Africa as well. So we're seeing this sort of dynamism of within days innovating with product design, because they can. Their mission is to help people, and the product they make almost doesn't matter. So they're not going to be religiously committed to a specific product. That's one thing. Another thing has been, as a part of our campaign that we created, which is Stay Home, Live Fair campaign. It's a hashtag as well as a whole bunch of asks. A lot of our members have created web shops. They've tried to use online tools to connect with consumers and supporters. They're trying to direct people to have, a connection with them through those web shops, through some of the crowdfunding links that have come up. And I think all of that's been quite, it's shown there's a dynamism there. These people aren't going to sort of go away quietly. They're going to fight to survive, and whatever this current situation allows them to do, they'll take on that task. So yeah, the solidarity has been the other thing that's been phenomenal. If we have a closed Facebook group within the WFTO community for WFTO members to join and share innovations, and in that group they're just posting tips, they're scrutinizing each other's production and product designs, they're sharing information on, oh, there's a buyer here's a humanitarian agency who really needs masks, who can provide this quantity, let's get the right design for that specific people. You would expect these enterprises to be competitors. They're not. They're behaving like they're brothers and sisters in arms that are just going to get through this crisis. And that solidarity and the immediate, galvanization of trust has been one of the most hopeful things I've seen come out of it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's really unique to the fair trade movement, is this sense and spirit of solidarity, even though we're all kind of in a way kind of competing for the same marketplace. So I think that is just another example of the long trajectory of this movement over the years of really working together, building that solidarity over international borders, that really carries over, especially in a time of crisis. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was going to say, even things, just information sharing of opportunities and ideas, and the honest conversations that are happening between the importer fair trade enterprises and the producer exporter fair trade enterprises has been encouraging to see. I mean, there's always very honest debate sometimes around those relationships, but it's a tough time, and normally you would expect some sort of animosity between a company and its supplier. But they're working together to see how they can spread the pain, how they can get through difficult situations, and that I'm finding very hopeful as well.
So you've talked a little bit about sort of the inner workings of WFTO members, and for those of us perhaps kind of in the ally or the supporter role within the fair trade movement, do you have any tips or ideas on how we can approach this crisis and kind of what we can do in the short term?
Well, first thing, I would encourage anyone listening to this to go to wfto.com/stay home live fair. That's the campaign that gives 3 very specific things people can do. I think the level of social media engagement currently is quite high, and I think there's a lot of people staying at home feeling like, I'm cut off from the world. How do I feel a connection? And we've tried to design this campaign with our members to say, look, we're as global a community as there is, 76 countries, every continent, every type of community represented. This is a time when we're going to talk about this. We're going to pick a product in our home that connects us across the seas to somebody else. It might be a gift that you got. It might be a product that you saw that you love the story of, or it might be an artisanal technique that's being kept alive because of a specific social enterprise in the WFTO community or elsewhere. So talking about those products, posting those online, challenging each other to talk about this, continuing that conversation. I mean, it's phenomenally important, not least because it raises awareness and hopefully starts getting some of the traffic into the web shops that are going to allow some of these enterprises to get through the crisis. but also it's a show of solidarity that gives a huge amount of energy. If you're in lockdown in India at the moment and you can't make anything, you can't produce anything, you're looking your community in the eye and saying, I don't know what else I could do right now. We just got to get through this crisis. To see people around the world talking about your product and saying, look, it's giving me comfort in a time of need, a time of isolation. It's helping me, in our hashtag stay home, live fair. Those kinds of social media posts are incredibly empowering to people, and they give them hope. So I would ask people to use that hashtag, to post, to talk about the importance of fair trade right now, and to also promote some of our fair trade enterprises. Whether it's their web shops, whether it's their crowdfunding campaigns, all of that you can find through wfto.com/stay home live fair.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Erinch, for that. I think, the BFTO website has got a ton of great resources and, inspirational content from throughout the membership. So I think it's a great place to start, and we'll be sure to promote that hashtag and website as well. So before we let you go, I know you're quite busy. Any final thoughts before we head out?
My final thought is that, in a time like this, when everything's at a standstill, it's, I think, very easy to just go, let's just go back to the way things were. And I would encourage people to really retain a level of ambition for what we can create out of this crisis, because, let's not make all this pain for nothing. A lot of people are dying. A lot of people are going through difficult circumstances. We're all going to struggle, I think, in different ways across the world. And the way I think we can go some ways is to say, something good came out of this, is we create a better economic system, and let's keep our ideas bold and our ambitions high for what we can do as citizens, as consumers, as activists. I would encourage people to step up on that agenda.
Well, fantastic. Well, Erinch, thank you so much for your time and your leadership and all the great work of the WFTO. And we look forward to keeping in touch over the course of this crisis and all the fine work that you all are doing.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.